So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think that we've been seeing, and Lee, I kind of wanted you to weigh in on this about journalism. As you may have noticed, I had Ava Bartlett on my show, who is in Ukraine right now on the ground, and she's on a kill list, on the Ukrainian military kill list. Not one Western outlet will cover it. And here she is, a Canadian citizen, a renowned investigative reporter. She's gotten awards for her work. For years, she was, on the ground in the Middle East and Syria, and then now she's in Ukraine, the Donbass region. And she actually, is not getting help from the Canadian. And she also has an American passport. Silence. In fact, the only thing that happened was NBC did a hit piece. And I don't know if you were in that hit piece, Lee, but some other people were from RT. And of course, RT was named and such. But what is your thoughts on Ava Bartlett and just journalists in general, like Shireen,
Well,
who was assassinated?
I'm a huge fan of Ava's.
Yeah.
So I've been following her work for years. And the fact that she's on a kill list, I know a couple of people, she's one, and then John Mark Dugan is also on that kill list. And he's been on my show. And I know Igor Lopatnik, who directed the film Ukraine on Fire.
Right.
And I'm in a film he directed called Revealing Ukraine.
Right.
And when they played that film in Ukraine, the TV station was attacked with a missile, a shoulder-launched missile.
Wow.
And that shows the reception that democracy gives to documentaries. So I've thought, I've often thought about, because again, being on Sputnik, I mentioned I had been a Trump supporter in 2016 because I hated Hillary.
Right.
And I'm ideologically, I guess, conservative libertarian is the way I put it. But most of the hosts, I would say, are on the left. And I realized one thing the hosts have in common, and this is important about Assange reporters too, whatever they think about ideological labels like left or right, they're all anti-war. They're all against the military-industrial complex. Every Assange reporter I know is anti-war.
Right.
And I think that is why Assange is targeted. Being being anti-war and anti-military industrial complex, being anti-imperialist war. That is the common characteristic I think also Assange reporters have.
yes.
Misty, you agree?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely. And it brings people together across the ideological spectrum, as it should, because this isn't a left or right issue. This is an everybody issue, at least if you are a decent human being who cares about ending imperialist war. I mean, it is really that simple. So yes, I 100% agree. I've noticed that in, in my time in the Assange space, that everybody, and that's a huge part of why people come to being an Assange supporter, because no one on earth has done more to expose the American empire than Julian Assange. It's not even close.
Right.
And that's why I think, I'll just say, if it seems like a contradiction for some people, because I am proudly pro-Russian in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and it's because I'm anti-war. This war has been going on for 8 years against the people of Donbass. And I see Russia as unfortunately having to go to war to end the war. And and so that's my take on that. I just want to mention it.
Well, and they were backed into a corner, wouldn't you say, Lee? I mean, you've been watching this unfold for the last decade, and they were getting intel, which is true, that the Ukrainians were searching out for nuclear weapons, which would have been on the border, right, a couple of hours or a few hours from within reach of some major population areas in Russia. And I mean, think about if, our audience can think about if that was Canada or Mexico or Cuba or something where those were quite close. And the NATO expansion and the argument about how that shouldn't have led into the decision. Well, of course it did. NATO expansion is expanded eight times in the last decade, closer and closer to the Russian border. And now, they're talking, Finland and Sweden are talking about trying to get into the EU. And so there's a 900-mile border of Finland on Russia where there'll be, where the US wants to place weapons, or NATO wants to place weapons. And so what is Russia supposed to do? They
And
have to
I had
protect
been
their
covering
people.
a story since 2017. I've
Yeah.
been talking about Ukraine. I say Igor's film in 2017, and I didn't know anything about Ukraine. So
Right.
when Putin came out and said he wants to denazify Ukraine,
Right.
I can understand if you weren't paying any attention to Ukraine and you suddenly hear he's trying to what? Denazify it?
Yeah.
Well, I'd known from 2017 that there were Nazis who do a torch march every January 1st to celebrate Stefan Bandera. We talked about it dozens of times,
Right. Mhm.
but I understand why a lot of people, in January, if they never heard that Ukraine has Ukrainian Nazis in it and they worship a guy named Stefan Bandera.
Yeah,
If
I
they-
mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. And 12% of the Ukrainian government was made up of neo-Nazis or armed militia. And that's a big part of the Ukrainian, if you can call it a government. And it's never been a democracy. And the rhetoric that's going around about being a democracy, I mean, Lee, it was never a democracy. Am I right?
No.
Factually with that? Yeah.
And in fact, one of the things I like to point out to people, and I'll give everyone the reference, so and you can look it up yourself. Don't
Mhm.
take my word for it. Look up "To Catch a Nazi Village Voice." You'll find an article from 1986, that was still the Soviet Union, and it exposes how the CIA was working with Ukrainian Nazis since the 1940s and 50s. The US government and the CIA have been supporting Ukrainian Nazis since the 50s. And
Wow.
a Nazi named Mykola Lebed, who fought with the Nazis and was responsible for atrocities, war crimes in World War II, he died in Pittsburgh. He lived out his life funded by the CIA, and it's all in the CIA's records. So if anyone wants something shocking, this is not new. The CIA supporting Nazis in Ukraine dates back to the 50s.
Mhm.